Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CET experience virtually. My name is Farlee Wade-Farber, and I'll be talking to you today about best practices in rendering. And I called it Good Enough is Good Enough, simply because I think we're always striving for perfection. We're always striving to get that exact photorealistic rendering, when I would say probably 80 to 85% of our job, we need to stop at good enough and move on to the next task. So let's take a look at, first, let me introduce myself. I'm a native Washingtonian. I grew up in Friendly, Maryland. It's honest truth right there. I am the only speaker who will tell you I have a bachelor's degree in music. I've been a practicing music therapist for 39 years, but I apprenticed in interior design starting in 2005. I joined my first dealership in 2017. I was not an apprentice the whole time, but that's when I started with a dealership. I have 2 kids and my 2 beautiful grandkids. When I'm not trying to get that perfect rendering, I sew. I made that little dress Penny's wearing right now. I like to read and I like to go kayaking. And this is one of my favorite Dawn Patrol pictures. This is it. This is the big one right here. This is what we're all aiming for. This is the photorealistic rendering. It's got depth. It's got texture. It's got accessories. It's got architecture. It's got things I'm not even focusing on. If you look beyond the space I'm actually focusing on, you can see there's furniture in other spaces. It has got everything that you want in it. This, however, is one of the pitfalls of our business. This is what we think we should be shooting for all the time. And what we need to do is learn to when to say stop. And this, to me, is actually good enough. And I know you're all saying, oh, her tack board's not lined up. You know what? You can talk through that when you're presenting your materials to your customer, whether your customer is your salesperson, your A&D rep, or your actual customer. This is good enough. It gives the customer a good glimpse into what their furniture is going to look like. So let's talk about how we're going to get to talking about good enough. We're going to go over some basic rendering settings. What are some baselines you can use to get a rendering that's good enough? Some accessories, some tips for adding enough accessories to get a good enough rendering, walls, windows, and other architectural features. And this is a really important point. Stop number 4 is when to stop tinkering with it, because your time is more valuable as a designer than a visualization specialist. You're the only one on your team who can do the specs, the programming, the installation drawings, the power coordination drawings, all of those things. There are other people you can send your thing out to, your project out to, if you really need it to be a high level of visualization. You need to do what you do best, not try to do what somebody else does best. It's hard. It's a hard thing to accept. We're going to talk about levels of rendering, the time they take, and the value they add to the process. And we're going to talk a little bit about talking to sales, A&D, and leadership about the rendering process and setting guidelines for its use. So let's start with my basic rendering settings. This is my go-to for almost everything. My minute I open up PhotoLab, my fingers go there, or I have it as a preset, and that's where I start for everything. First thing is right up here at the top with my photograph setup. I go to product lighting. That was my first one right there at the top, photograph setup. My next one, render mode, natural light. Works for me, gives me a great picture. I don't have to think about where else I'm going to go with it. Next one, rendering quality. This is going to shock you, 70 to 80%. And I can hear you saying right now, why not 90? Why not 100%? First of all, I'm going to start with my render time. At 70%, I rendered this in 19 seconds. When I've rendered things at 100%, I've had time to go get a cup of coffee and chat with my friends and come back, and it's just then getting to my green border. And the picture quality, honestly, it's really not that much different. 70% was good enough. My image dimensions, it's that standard 4:3 dimension that you see in magazines, other visual materials. So it's 1920 times 1440, 4:3 rendering. It gives you a great picture. Lighting and shadows. I use sun for natural light. The next thing down, and trust me, if I'm not talking about something, it's because I don't touch it. I'm skipping it on purpose. I don't need to fiddle with it. Camera. The camera actually adds an element of like flash, like a flash bulb with a camera going off in your picture. It brightens it temporarily just for the length of the time it takes to create that picture. And I set mine based on the kind of finishes I have. This is kind of a medium finish. So, you know, I'm somewhere in between my 20 and my 30. I'm at 27 because it tends a little bit dark. But if it's a very light finish, I don't want it to wash out all the color. So I'll put my camera down at 20. If it's a very dark finish, I might go up to 30. My shadow direction of the sun, high noon. Put that sun right on top of that dot in the middle. I don't want to see any shadows down here. Very rarely do I have shadows in my office, even though my desk is one away from the window. It's just distracting. It's distracting to the viewer. My outline overlay, I actually keep on, and I keep on for a reason. A lot of times I render things in white, and the edges you can see here are getting just a little bit mushed out. You can't really see where they are. And if I turn on outline overlay here in my post-processing, I'll get a little gray line here that makes it look just a little crisper. So post-processing settings. That was a good segue. I have color open because I'll play with the brightness a little bit. Sometimes I don't hit that flash just right, so I might lighten it up or I might darken it up a little bit using the slider here. All of these I basically keep closed because I don't use them on a regular basis. I use crop. I get rid of everything in the picture that I don't need. I'm focusing on the furniture for my customer. I don't add a watermark. I don't very rarely use ghost rendering, but like I said, I do use outline overlay because it gives especially white finishes just a little bit of an edge so that it looks more three-dimensional. And I can play with that line thickness using the opacity or the line thickness. There's my rendering. That's my rendering with all those settings. You can see I've just added a little bit of outline overlay here to kind of crisp it up a little bit. It's fairly well cropped. I probably could have cropped it a little bit better, but it shows the product to advantage. You can see that you have a storage cabinet and a box file and a height adjustable desk with a shroud and some storage, 2 chairs, monitor arms, and a task chair. It's good enough. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Stop. You can stop right there. It really is good enough. The customer can get a sense of what they're buying from that picture. So how do I get there? I use standards. I talk about Class A renderings with my salespeople. I talk about Class B renderings with my salespeople, Class C and Class D, or why am I spending so much time on this? So those are the rendering standards kind of that I've been used to talking to my salesperson with. Comes to me, says, I need a quick rendering because I'm going into a exploratory meeting with a customer. I said, how quick is quick? Do you want a white sweep? Do you want a little bit of background? Do you want some details, or do you want a full architectural environment? White sweep, I can knock you off 5 of them in the next hour. But if you want to go up higher, it's going to take more time. And if I'm working, since I work specifically with one salesperson, I can always say, hey, if you want me to do this, I don't have enough time to do that. Everything is a negotiation. So Class A, it's like I said, it's a basic white sweep with or without the CAD plan visible. When I do a white sweep, I kind of like the CAD plan visible because it gives a sense of the furniture in the space without taking the time to build the walls. Minimal or no post-production tweaks. So I'm talking less than 5 minutes from the time you put the furniture in the space, you throw your camera angle up there, you do all your presets or you bring it in as a favorite, and it's less than 5 minutes from the time you click render until the time you click save. More often than not, it's a minute because you're happy with your first one because you've gotten all of your presets. I've got just enough crispness in here so that my furniture looks really good and it's showing the space. Let's take a little side quest here. How do I make the CAD plan visible? And this is the difference between the chartreuse, or I heard someone call it Grello, I like that, and blue boxes in 2D. If you haven't used this feature, I use this feature all the time. So let's take a look at it. The yellow box or the chartreuse box or the green box, it depends on your color of your screen, includes everything it surrounds. And you notice that it's not surrounding my entire CAD plan. So it's only including those things that are inside the boundaries of this box. And if you look over here in my kind of 3D glimpse over here, you can see there's no CAD plan at all. The blue box excludes everything it surrounds. So if you see here, the blue box, it's not surrounding my CAD plan, so it's not excluding it, but it is excluding all of this furniture in this office. So you can't see it here, but you can see this office with the CAD plan visible. A lot of times, if you click on 2D with my renderings, you'll see blue boxes all over the place as I exclude things to get down to what I want to see rather than including what I want to see. So here we go, mischief managed. We got off on our side quest and we came back to ourselves. Let's talk about the next class, Class B. It's generic architecture and architectural finishes, 3 to 5 major accessories. And by major accessories, I think of those as something everybody will have in their office or their workstation. Monitors, a keyboard, and a mouse. Almost everybody has that. Some lighting, you notice I threw a light in here to let my customer know that there was lighting under my overhead, and very minimal post-production tweaks. Yeah, there's a line out here. There's some weird shadows under the window, but it's good enough. If my customer is looking at my line and my weird shadows under the window, they're not looking at my furniture. And that's what I'm selling to my customer is the furniture. So I maybe spent 10 to 15 minutes adding walls and accessories. Likely not, because I have all of those saved as favorites and we'll get there. I only did one rendering attempt. I might have done a second so I could clean this up a little bit, but total time after the furniture is built, less than 30 minutes. And I'm actually saying probably closer to 15 minutes. I'm adding very little time to my project. So Class C, it's Class B plus some more accessories, an exterior environment, and some personalization. Again, I don't spend a lot of time creating additional architectural features and finishes because I have them all saved. I can just quickly import them into my plan. So I may say 10 to 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes here, creating additional architectural features and finishes. But honestly, it still does not take that long if you take the time to set it up beforehand in your copious amounts of downtime, right? I'm going to spend an hour today building up my CET favorites library. I added some personal touches. You can see a picture back here. If you've got your eagle eye on, you'll notice that that is the same kayaking picture from my introduction slide. I have probably used that picture in many, many, many renderings. It doesn't detract. It adds a little bit of color to the scene. I added some books. I added a plant. Total time after the furniture is built, up to 1 hour. Again, honestly, if it takes you more than 20 minutes, you're not using your standards and your favorites correctly. Remember, this is to get it out to your customer, whether it's a customer or your salesperson or your A&D rep, as quickly as possible with still a very good product. So stop right there. Stop at level C. It's more than good enough. You've gotten the product to your customer in a good amount of time. You really don't need to go on. But just for argument's sake here, let's talk about where I started and where I finished. This is where I started and this is where I finished. If you'll notice, didn't really do any, I zoomed in a little bit, but the camera angle hasn't changed. I added some things here, where I started, where I finished, not really that different. So how I got there from Class A to Class C, I used, and I talked about it a lot already, standards. I added standard architectural features and accessories. And here's the most important part of this. I never changed my rendering settings or my post-processing settings. I'll say it again, not just because I fumbled the first time, but because it's important. I never changed my rendering settings or my post-processing settings. I didn't fiddle with anything except adding more product to my photograph. Remember, this is where I started and this is where I finished. The only thing that's different is the material that I added. I did not change my rendering settings at all from those settings that I gave you at the very beginning of our presentation. So how did I do that in less than 20 minutes? I've talked about it. Standards, standards, standards. I have a standard accessories package. I have a standard architecture package. I have standards for my architectural finishes. I very rarely deviate from them. Remember I told you about my picture? In my picture, everybody knows it's a rendering that I did because it's a picture of the clouds in the lake where I kayak. The architecture, 2 walls, is fine. The finishes, use what you have in CET or create something that you really, really like and use it consistently. So let's talk about that. My accessorizing and architectural standards. Let the furniture tell the story. The furniture is what you are selling. You aren't selling the view out the window. That's the real estate broker. You aren't selling the pencils and the pens and the Post-its. That's what Staples does. Let the furniture tell the story. Consider the rule of 3 or the rule of odds. You'll notice that I had some books, a picture, and a plant. That's pretty standard for me. Some books, a picture, and a plant. Just enough to give it a little bit of personalization without making it look like a sterile environment or making it look like, well, we've all done those inventories where we walk into somebody's office and we walk right back out again because you can't see the furniture for the stuff. Add biophilia, add a plant. A plant makes an office look homey. And stay generic. Don't get too specific with your customer because you might actually need to pull that rendering out of your hat 3 or 4 times because your salesperson is going off on another venture to try and drum up more business for your dealership. So quick tips for accessories, and we talked about this. Use favorites. Let's get over to my CET screen here. You see this is the picture I made for you. I used this drawing. If you notice when I hit F for favorites, there's my 2 walls. It's a 10 by 12 office, right hand, 2 walls. It's already painted. I don't need to worry about it. I just drag it in there. I have my accessories package. If I were to open that and just drop it here in my drawing, you'd see there it is, my plant, my picture, and my books. I very rarely change from that. Going back, you can see I have monitors, and it's actually monitors and a keyboard, and it's already set at the right angle, at the right height. I don't need to stop and fiddle with it and tweak it because I have it as a favorite. Other favorites I have are overhead lights. You know, I work with a lot of manufacturers, and every time I drag a light in, it says, do you want to turn it on? And then I turn it on and it washes out my picture. It's not the right color or it's way too bright. And then you have to stop and fiddle with the lights. I've stopped fiddling with the lights. I created 2 little Omni lights that are right here. I know that they wash the tack board with exactly the finishes I want, exactly the lighting that I want. So I just take one and I drag it there right up under my tack board, right there next to my light. I might use my page up or page down key to put it in the right space, which is usually right under my overhead, and it washes it just fine. I don't have to say, oh, for this company's lights, I need to put it at that. And for that company's lights, I need to put it at this. It's all right there. So you can see that I've done a lot with standards. Just because CET has a symbol for it does not mean you have to use it. There are lots of great symbols in CET. There's a cake with strawberries on it, but just because it's there, it doesn't mean I have to use it. Don't take personalization too far. Don't try and worry about finding a picture of a family or something like this. It's a generic landscape. Avoid overshadowing the furniture. If the first thing you notice in a picture is the accessory, delete it. And I actually deliberately made that mistake in this rendering because for me, I look at this picture and the first thing my eye goes to is the stormtrooper on the Eames chair. I love this picture. I think it's funny. I think it's just, it makes me smile every time I see it, but it overshadows the rest of my rendering. It really does. You kind of look at that and you want to go, oh, is that really? That's a stormtrooper. And what's he on? He's on an Eames chair. I have no idea of the story of this picture. One day I'm going to find out about it because it just cracks me up every single time. But I really should have just left that as a black monitor. Should not have tried to do anything there. Less is more. Again, my rule of threes. I'm not overshadowing my furniture. No one's really interested to see what's on the shelves in my office because there's nothing there. It's showing the customer what they're going to buy. And cutesy, well, yeah, I would say my stormtrooper is cutesy. Just no. Just no. Unless it's a customer you have a super long-standing relationship with and you've got a thing going on, it's not a good thing to start. So quick tips for architecture. Generic beige is fine. I use the Sherwin-Williams Arcade White. And oops, how do I get there? So another quick side quest. I go out to the Sherwin-Williams website. There we go. You can see that there's an RGB value here. I can take that RGB and I can put it in my materials and it will come out with Arcade White, or I can take a snippet of this Arcade White and then create a material out of it. So if I go back to my CET, you can see here, if you do this material, I can put in my RGB right there. It comes up as Sherwin-Williams Arcade White. I can save it as a favorite and I will have it forever. I can paint whatever I want Arcade White, which is a great generic kind of beige. I used to call it apartment house beige. Now I call it office beige. So I have my generic Arcade White. I have my generic floor. It's just there. Stop. You can stop right there. It's better than good enough. That's a great picture, if you ask me. It tells the story of the furniture. It gives the customer a really good idea of how their furniture is going to look in their space. It does what it needs to do. So you can stop right there. But we're designers. We're perfectionists. We're perfectionists because we're designers, or we're designers because we're perfectionists. We want the class D. And I know that some of my colleagues have already done many, many presentations on getting to that photorealism. And I call that class D, or darn it, I went down that rabbit hole again. And here poor Alice is going down the rabbit hole. She's got a Queen Anne table and maybe a bird cage and looks like some picture frames and a vase on a shelf. She's drowning in furniture as she goes down that rabbit hole. What is a Class D? It's a full architectural environment with real-to-life finishes. It adds personal touches like the logo of the company, more than 3 accessories, custom finishes. You've gone through the 100% CDs and you said, oh, this is the paint and this is the carpet. And you've gone out and you've created these finishes. You've put artwork on the walls. You've done more with specialized lighting. You've done better with the exterior environments than the general, high-rise outside of the window. You've done multiple rendering attempts and tweaks, and you've done extensive post-processing to get the kind of rendering that looks like this. This was a real-life job. The salesperson went through 3 choices of furniture. This was the final, but she demanded, even after I pushed back, that it look as photorealistic as possible. She had me build the ceiling. This is the actual wallpaper in the space. This carpet, if you're familiar with the product, floor tiles, they come in like 18 by 18 tiles. The customer was going to use it and put it down as a quarter turn. So I took a picture, little snippet of the carpet, and then I put it on the floor. And then I rotated it quarter turn and I put the next one down and the next one down and the next one down and the next one down until I built the entire carpet. It was painstaking. It was time consuming. And it was time consuming to sell 8 stools because the table was already there, 1 2-seater sofa, 2 tables, a bench, and 2 chairs. That's what was sold. That was the end proposal to the customer. That was the product that was on it. But instead, I went crazy. I went crazy 3 times to do this. You'll notice that I didn't really care for any of the chandeliers that were in CET. So I took the sconce and I rotated it and I stretched it out and turned it into a chandelier to make the 2 of them match. I added a picture on the wall with the logo of the company that was going to receive the proposal on it. Not only did I take a picture of the carpet, but you'll notice my carpet has height. I actually did it as a material and I had it superimpose upon itself to give it depth. It's crazy. It was absolutely crazy. You don't even, it was absolutely crazy to sell this job. This next one was a made-up picture. It started out as a real job. And then when I wanted to enter the Herman Miller rendering competition earlier this year, I went a little crazy. I added wall art with lights behind it. I added a skylight. I added pictures. I put stuff all over the shelves. I hung a backpack on the Eames hang-it-all. I put the Nelson clock on the wall. I think the bird is around here someplace too. I added an exterior environment. I put in a railing around my balcony up here, even though a balcony wasn't originally part of the job. It was just, this room had huge ceilings. There's more artwork. There's the standard Herman Miller black and white picture back there. There are tables behind here that are lit up. Therefore, that's why you can see light through here. I put the sun through the window. I did crazy, crazy, crazy amounts of stuff for this rendering competition. And it was fun. It was great. It let me stretch my wings, but to do this for an everyday job is not going to happen. So stop. If you find yourself doing that, stop. You've gone too far. If you're spending that much time rendering, you're not spending time specifying, coordinating with options, doing your COMs, doing your IT drawings, your power drawings, your installation drawings. If you're spending that much time on your renderings, there's a whole bunch of stuff you're not doing. So quiz time. Let's go back to those 2 renderings, or we'll just talk about it here. How much time do you think I spent on those renderings? Let's go back and look at them one more time. This one and this one. How much time do you think I spent on those renderings? This was 30 hours. It was 30 hours from the time I built the first wall through the time I did the last rendering with the product in it. From the time I built the first wall to the ceiling, to the lighting, to adding all of the rest of the pieces, the marble floor in the exact marble, the carpet that I told you how I built literally square by square by square, the unseen elevator lobby back here. It just took a really long time, 30 hours. This one, probably at this point, by the time I changed my pillars to brick and I added some more accessories, I'm guessing it's upwards of 70 hours. Simply because I wanted to do a good job and I wanted to win the contest. Did I? No, but that's another story. And why did it take me 70 hours? Because this was rendered at 100%. From the time I pushed the button render until the time that green border came on that told me my render was done was upwards of an hour. Each attempt took almost an hour. Now, that was not on the computer that I use now. It was on the computer I used before. This one would probably do it in a half an hour, about half that time. But still, I spent a lot of time waiting for the final picture to show up, only to say, oh, shoot, I goofed that up, and go back and fix it and try it again. Now, granted, I did this all on my own time. And in that hour while the computer was working, I was doing laundry or whatever. But still, it took a lot of time to get that far. So there's our quiz time. Next thing we're going to talk about today is resource allocation. And I've hinted at that throughout this entire presentation. Return on investment. For the investment that you're making in these renderings, what are you getting out of it? So let's first of all talk about what your investments are. You're thinking, oh, it's just time. It's not just time. It's also equipment. This is the fourth computer I've had in 5 years with my dealership, 6 years with my dealership. The fourth computer I've had each time, because I simply wear them out. I'm like, I can't do anything else while it's rendering. I'm stuck. I can't do anything else. So what I really needed to realize is that I needed to pull back my rendering and also bring up my equipment. Some dealerships use a separate rendering computer. Once you get it all set up on your computer, you take it over to another computer so that while you push that button and it takes that 25, 30, 40 minutes to render, you can be back at your computer answering emails or working on specs or doing something else. Training. You got to come to the CET conference virtually or in person or both. Someone invested money in you to learn how to use this software to your dealership's advantage. All of these are investments that you make to getting towards that rendering, or that your dealership makes towards getting into that rendering. Some of the positive returns on that investment, you're going to win the bid. You've got the beautiful pictures. Hopefully you've got the right price. You've impressed the client. They like you. You've had your bid interview. You've won that bid, and your renderings did help that process. Or you've impressed the client and they're going to come back to you for more return business. We all love it when we pick up that client that's got 4 or 5 sites in our metropolitan area, and we've done one office and they say, oh, we got another office for you to do. We got a third office for you to do. And we got a fourth office for you to do. We want you to come back and work for us some more. These are all positive returns. What are some of the negative returns? This is a phrase that I'm hearing more and more and more and more. Speed to market. How fast can you get something in the hands of your customer? How fast can you get something in the hands of your customer? And you want that something to be good enough, but maybe not overboard. Because like I said, you're going to get that 3 o'clock in the afternoon phone call that says, hey, I'm meeting with a customer at 5 o'clock for drinks. Do you have some renderings I can put on my phone to show them? Well, great. Yes, I do, because I keep a stash of them for them. But suppose they want to see a specific product that's not in my stash of renderings. I need to say to the person who's asking me that, okay, do you want a white sweep? Do you want an environment? Do you want this? Do you want that? This is how long all of those things are going to take me to do that. And like I said, I work with one salesperson and I can say to him, hey, whoa, wait a minute. If you want me to do that, it means I'm not doing this. So think about it. If you want me to do that, I'm not doing this, because you've also asked me to hurry up and get that spec to you so that you can get a proposal to the customer tonight. Okay, well, I'm not going to do that till tomorrow morning. So can you do my renderings right now? We want speed to market. We want to get what we have into the hands of our customer just as quickly as possible, because they're going to go with somebody who can. It also, one of the negative returns is that it ties up designers. It really does. If you're headed off for that class D rendering, or even a class C, maybe a C plus somewhere in the middle, it ties up designers. What are you not doing because you're spending time rendering? You're not checking your email and being responsive that way. You're not working on specs. You're not interacting with options. You're not doing shop drawings for furniture that you've asked options to create. You're not maybe helping another designer with a project. Maybe you're doing a double check for them, or maybe it's a junior designer that you're mentoring that you need to work with. All of these things, remember, I said it earlier, it's a trade-off. If you want to go for these Class D renderings, expect to sit right in front of your computer and do nothing else, because you won't have time for it and your computer won't have the computing power for it. I've chosen to stop at Class D, Class C, and I've gotten to Class C as quickly as I possibly can so that I have that time as a senior designer at my dealership to mentor our young designers, to work with other people, to make sure that my specs are tight, to help someone with their first options request. Oh, I want them to create a cabinet that looks like this. And I tried to describe it, but I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so let's talk about a shop drawing. I actually came from residential. I did a lot of that. I know how to create cabinet drawings. So let's create a quick cabinet drawing. And that way the picture will tell the story to the options people of what you want. So think about how much time you're tying up designers. Are you outsourcing stuff that you could keep in-house because your designers are doing renderings? Speaking of outsourcing, this is a good time to mention it. There are outsource renderings. I mean, if you work with any of the major 5 manufacturers, every single one of them has some group that is there to support your dealership in getting the business. Because if your dealership gets the business, they get the business. In the Miller Knoll world, it's called the opportunity room. And you can say, hey, I've got this great bid. They're asking for a lot of specialized furniture. I need a direct line to options, and I need someone else to handle the rendering. I can't do it all. Every single one of your 5 major manufacturers has those. And I'm betting that some of the other manufacturers have them too, because they want that business. They're going to contract with a renderer or a graphics arts person who's going to give them the picture that you want to put in that bid package. I very rarely do bid package pictures anymore because they're always going out to the outsourced people. So resource allocation, it's how much time are you spending rendering when you could be spending time on something else? But we also need to think about following the money. And this is the point where a lot of designers' eyes glaze over. If you are a sole designer and you're outsourcing yourself, that's great. You don't have to worry about this because you're just charging your customer for your time. If maybe you're a designer in a small dealership where everyone has their eye on the bottom line, you need to follow the money. If this is a one-off office, the list price is $24,000 and change. We buy it from the manufacturer for about $8,300. We're selling it to our customer for a little over $1,100. What we're making in profit is about $2,700. And it's not really profit. And I know everyone's eyes are starting to glaze over because we don't like talking about the money. We're creative people. It's not what we do. We make the great pictures. We do the designs. We're nerdy on the specs. But the money part of it, we're not so sure about what happens there. But someone in your company is following that money. So have a sense of where that money is, what's coming in and what's going out to help you judge where to spend your time. So if we look at this profit of $2,700 and change, your dealership has to pay commission to your salesperson, has to pay your salary, has to pay the PM's salary, has to pay all the back of the house stuff, the sales support, the admin, the marketing, human resources, IT. Even if you contract out any of these things, the bills have to be paid. All of the overhead, rent, utilities, insurance. And I'm not talking, oh, I dropped a 4-way connector on my toe insurance. I'm talking, you get benefits. Someone's got to be paying for that. Equipment. We talked earlier about my computer, that this is the 4th computer I've had in 6 years. That's a lot of money to spend on equipment. So next time you go down that rabbit hole of rendering, or someone wants you to go down that rabbit hole of rendering, think about where you're spending your dealership's money. How much money is coming in? How much money is going out? Look at some of these wonderful outsource firms that do this sort of Class D rendering or upgraded Class C, probably much faster than you can and much cheaper than you can. And you can spend that time on tightening your specs, working with your salesperson, all of those things that I mentioned earlier. So I talked earlier about standards programs. How do you start a standards program? How do you get buy-in from all of these people to say, okay, I'm the design manager. We're going to start with standards for all of our rendering. So you got to get to buy-in from your management. That's pretty easy. You tell them how much it costs to make a rendering, how many hours your designers are spending on it. And they're going to say, you need to shut that down a little bit. You need to help people tone that down. Talk to your salespeople. What is it you exactly need from us? There will always be that one salesperson who says, I need photorealism all the time. And you pull them aside after that meeting and you have a private conversation with them. What are you willing to pay for this? How much money are you willing to spend on that photorealism? How much do you think we need to do it to be competitive in the market? Would you rather get it fast and pretty darn good? Or would you rather wait while it goes out to a renderer and maybe not get it for another week? You need to talk to your A&D rep. Again, they're one of the people who are calling and saying, hey, I'm going to go meet with this architecture firm. Do you have some pretty pictures I can show them? Yes, I have a library of them. I can send them to you really quick, but they want maybe a pretty picture of a product that just came out. Oops, got to build something in it. Got to check the spec book because I don't know what I'm doing yet because the product just came out. But the place I'm not going to waste time, or I'm going to streamline my time process, is I've had all of my rendering standards. You're going to get my 2 walls, my outside view, a couple of accessories, bang, you're out the door. Next thing you want to do after all of this is, after you've gotten buy-in that your dealership wants to start a rendering standards program, is to form a task force. You're going to want salespeople on that task force. And a little tip from the therapist in me to you is find the salesperson who is the most vocal and put them on your task force. That will really make them feel like they have owned the process. And when you come out with these standards, they're more likely to follow them. You're going to set objectives at your first meeting. What is it you want to accomplish with your standards program? Is it speed to market? Is it consistency of look? Is it consistency of lookbooks? Maybe this is also part of your standards program. We're not having the Wild West here where everybody has their own PowerPoint template. We're going out, we've got a PowerPoint template, and we've got a certain font we want to use, and this is the way we're going to go so that products that come from our dealership have a consistent look to them. So set objectives. What do you want to accomplish? Figure out what you want your standards program to do, and then you can figure out what form it always takes. So here we go, right back to Architecture 101, form follows function. So to recap today, I talked about basic rendering settings, how to get that good enough picture, how to get those good enough accessories, that good enough architecture to get you to a really good picture in a very short amount of time. When to stop. Stop right there at that C, or maybe a little bit of a C+. It's not worth going that extra step. It's time to look at what are some of our other sources for better pictures. Maybe we just pull pictures off the manufacturer's website. Maybe we go to an outsourced renderer, but know when to stop. Your time as a designer and all of that wealth of knowledge that you carry in your head, the 36-inch wide clearance, the 44-inch aisles, the 60-inch hallways, all of that stuff in your head is what you're needed for at your dealership. So you have to know when to stop the rendering and start doing the rest of the designing. Return on investment. How much money, time, person hours are you spending on rendering? And what are you not doing because you are doing the rendering? And lastly, I touched on setting up your own standards program, who to talk to in your dealership, who to get buy-in from, and how to start to have those conversations about no longer is it the Wild West. And of course, I'm using that analogy because the conferences was in Phoenix this year, and I have this wonderful Wild West imagery to go with. Not having the Wild West, having everybody have their own PowerPoint and their own way of doing things and their own look and their own this and their own that, but giving your dealership a look that's going to be consistent with their marketing materials and with how you approach your customers, whether it's in renderings, in fonts, in PowerPoint templates, setting up a standards program that gets you to the market faster and helps you win that job. So I want to say thank you today. Don't forget to scan for your CEU credit. You are more than welcome to email me with your questions or your observations about how to get to that rendering fast, or about how to set up standards program of your own. Thank you very much.